we want to thank you for taking some time this afternoon to come and learn about poetry and why we need to have poetry in our world. April is National Poetry Month, and we're grateful that New River Library wanted us to come and celebrate it here, and we are so happy to do so. I'm Janet Watson, current Vice President of New River Poets. And that name, New River, is not an accident or a coincidence. We started meeting here 25 years ago. And we're celebrating that. And so it was such a good opportunity to come and talk to everybody here. We chartered 25 years ago in March of 2000, beginning with meetings held right here. And we had another program called New River Poets and Writers, and people were writing plays and short stories and essays and all that sort of thing, but we found out that there was a real interest in poetry. Why? Well, maybe because it's shorter. You can, a novel is a real long-term project, so maybe that's one of the reasons, but I think maybe it's because poetry was a better vessel to carry our thoughts. And you might keep that kind of in your mind. It's a vessel carrying our thoughts out into the world. We focused then and aligned ourselves with the Florida State Poets Association. And that seemed to give us a lot of things that we weren't too sure about until we got started. And then so many of us started writing poetry much more seriously. So, why poetry? I expect we may have some real poetry lovers here, but maybe there are others who just want to know the answer to that question. Why poetry? And one reason could be that poetry is just a natural outpouring of the human spirit. It's the language of life. We love to write about it, but we love to read it as well. The poet Richard Blanco points out that poetry is the only art that all of us practice. And you're going to say, what do you mean? We do, because everyone observes. And when we observe something, our brains go into high gear. While we are seeing or hearing or touching, we're also focusing. We identify, we compare, we evaluate, we appreciate, or maybe we'll even disregard. But all that is going on, and we hardly even notice what we're doing. For instance, you're looking at me, and you might wonder, how old is she anyhow? Or why did she wear yellow today? All these little things might be going through your mind. And that could be the start of a poem. And so that's what poets do. They take all their observations. It's the same process of writing poetry. The poet Lucille Clifton said, I don't write out of what I know. I write out of what I wonder. And there is a lot of wondering in poetry. My husband and I were talking about that on the way here. Poetry is filled with wonder and questions. Poets take their observations a bit further. They try to choose the best words in the best order and put them onto paper. They might tell a story, which is called narrative poetry, or write something introspective. And it's particularly wonderful when we read or we hear a poem and we go, aha, something strikes the same thought in us. I thought that too. But then sometimes it's an entirely different direction that we take. It's kind of an exploration into someone else's mind. You see, humans are hardwired to connect with each other. And poetry is one way we can do that. We share fun, we share sorrow, all kinds of emotions, and we do that through poetry. It's the oldest form of literature, born from the oral tradition. Before language was written down, our ancestors were passing on religion, history, legends, and it was so important and so easy to remember if it was rhymed and it had rhythm. So that's the first kind of literature, you might say, that there ever existed. It was poetry. It's why we tell nursery rhymes to our toddlers. My 4 children loved Robert Louis Stevenson's A Child Garden of Verses, and every one of them had a copy of it as they grew up. And I would push them on a swing and they wouldn't be happy until I started reciting that poem about how do you like to go up in a swing, up in the air so blue. Oh, I do think it's the pleasantest thing ever a child can do. It was just something about the rhythm of the swing and the rhythm of that poem that they just loved. To grown-ups, maybe you recited poems while you were jumping rope or walking down a sidewalk with your friends. Maybe you had a poem up on the wall of your room like I did when I was growing up. And so you started being introduced to poetry in those ways. Were you ever turned off poetry? And when I ask that honestly, because I know a lot of people say, I don't get it. I just don't get it. But maybe you were asked what the poet meant, which is the wrong way to teach poetry. It's more about what you get from the poem, not what the poet's putting into it. That's why it appeals to so many different people in different ways. And there's no children here right now, but I suppose they might have favorites too. And I think about all those books in there that they can come and read. And if you have children, encourage them to read and read them out loud, because it means so much more when you do. So why do you and I need poetry right now? Any ideas? Anybody have any thoughts about that? Well, I'll offer a few, and maybe you'll agree with them. It's been said that it helps to create order out of chaos. The chaos in the world, the chaos that goes on in our own minds. It helps you get those thoughts all together. It creates balance in some way. It helps us to capture moments that we don't want to forget. That's the most important one for me, actually, when I'm writing poetry. I think it's sort of like a photograph. Once I get it down on paper, I can go back to that moment whenever I want to. I've written about people who've passed on, and they're still alive on my poem. It can calm you. It can have great power for change. You know, when we hear like Maya Angelou or somebody, Richard Blanco, who get up there and read their poems at inaugurations and that sort of thing, we go, wow, you know, that really is pushing us forward a little bit, a lot to think about there. Maybe you have a poem that's a psalm from the Bible. They're all poems. Or the words of a song, a love sonnet maybe. Or maybe something that you've seen on a tomb even, or a monument like the Statue of Liberty. We have that poem, The New Colossus, that's on the pedestal of the Statue of Liberty. There was a time not long ago when poetry was out of style. Nobody was talking about too much, and they couldn't even remember the names of any poets unless they were ones that they studied in school. Robert Frost or Walt Whitman, all wonderful poets. And but it takes a while to get to a place where you can find your own poets. And don't expect to like all poetry. I don't. I mean, some of it's just not my style at all. But I explore it, and sometimes I'll read it over and over again. We members of New River Poets come from varied backgrounds, and our likes and dislikes are very different. And we wanted to tell you why and where our own love of poetry came from. So that's what we're going to do first. And then after reading some of our favorite poems by others, we will hopefully have a little time to read some of our own poetry.
Thank you, Janet. Of course, this month marks the 29th anniversary of National Poetry Month, and that was inaugurated in 1996 by the Academy of American Poets. And I'm told it's the largest literary celebration in the world, with schools, libraries, bookstores, and poets celebrating poetry's vital place in our culture. And I'm happy to be here and be part of this celebration. When I was a boy, my father, a lover of words like me, recited a brief poem which I adored and I've never forgotten. It's called The Ketchup Bottle, and it goes like this. A funny thing, the ketchup bottle, first none'll come and then a lot'll. And you might guess the author of this ingenious rhyme, Ogden Nash. He's my favorite poet, a man whose verse entranced America and a good part of the world from the time of the Great Depression until 1971, when he passed away. In most of those years, Ogden Nash was clearly the most popular and revered poet in America. His keen grasp of human nature and his unique style of writing a poem made him the most widely read and frequently quoted poet in America. He is known primarily, of course, for his wit and whimsy and his wordplay and his outrageous rhyming. He began his career working for Doubleday Publishers in New York City and became a regular contributor to the New Yorker magazine. He went on to publish more than 24 collections of verse, as well as a variety of stories and screenplays, lyrics for theater, and essays. And he later became a favorite on radio and lecture platforms around the country. And I'd like to offer a few illustrations of the varying styles of Nash poetry. He was capable of writing very short pieces, like The Ketchup Bottle. Here are a few more examples. No McTavish was ever lavish. And that, of course, is a comment on Scottish generosity. Another one. In the vanities, no one wears panities. Alcohol is an intoxicant, so gin can often do what moxie can't. Love the rhyme. Here's a 4-line verse, which, as a former teacher of French, I've always been amused by. You may be familiar with the French phrase, chacun à son goût. That means each one to his own taste. And his version is titled, chacun à son Berlitz. French is easy. At speaking French, I am the champ of the Champs-Élysées. And since I can speak Parisian without a flaw, I will tell you why the crows, or les corbeaux, always win their battle against the scarecrows. It's on account of their esprit de corps. And of course, there are the famous Nash limericks. Here are a couple of examples. There was an old man from Calcutta who coated his tonsils with butter, thus converting his snore from a thunderous roar to a soft, oleaginous mutter. Another one. There was a young belle from old Natchez, whose garments were always in patches. P-A-C-H-E-Z, of course, patches. When comment arose on the state of her clothes, she drawled, "When I itches, I scratches." Ogden Nash created a shorter form of the limerick, a 4-line verse, to reflect this whittling down of the limerick. He called this form the limerick. Here's one example. 2 nudists of Dover, being purple all over, were munched by a cow when mistaken for clover. Not only was Nash recognized for his short, witty verses, he was also known for his long, rambling lines, which always finished in some kind of wild rhyming. And I'm going to take a few selections from this book to illustrate those kinds of Nash poems. This first one is called "Oh, to be Odd." Hypochondriacs spend the winter at the bottom of Florida and the summer on top of the Adirondacks. You go to Paris and live on champagne, wine, and cognac, if you are a dipsomaniac. If you're a manic depressive, you don't go anywhere where you won't be cheered up, and people will say there, if your bills are excessive. But you stick around and work day and night and day with your nose to the sawmill if you're normal. Here's another. This one is called Columbus. Once upon a time, there was an Italian, and some people thought he was a rapscallion. But he wasn't offended because other people thought he was splendid. And he said the world was round, and everybody made an uncomplimentary sound. But his only reply was pooh. He replied, "Isn't this 1492? It's time for me to discover America. I know my chronology. And if I discover America, you owe me an apology." So we went and tried to borrow some money from Ferdinand. But Ferdinand said America was a bird in the bush, and he'd rather have a bird in hand. But Columbus's brain was fertile. It wasn't arid. And he remembered that Ferdinand was unhappily married. And he thought, there is no wife like a misunderstood one. Because her husband thinks something is a terrible idea, she is bound to think it's a good one. So he perfumed his handkerchief with bay and rum and citronella, and he went to see Isabella. And he looked wonderful, but he had never felt sillier. And she said, "I can't place the face, but the aroma is familiar." And Columbus didn't say a word. And all he said was, "I am Columbus, the 15th century Admiral Byrd." And just as he thought, her disposition was very malleable. And she said, "Here are my jewels." And she wasn't penurious like Cornelia, the mother of Gracchi. She wasn't referring to her children. No, she was referring to her jewels, which were very, very valuable. So Columbus said, "Somebody show me the sunset." And somebody did, and he set sail for it. And he discovered America, and they put him in jail for it. And the fetters gave him welts, and they named America for somebody else. So the sad fate of Columbus ought to be pointed out to every child and every voter, because it has a very important moral, which is, don't be a discoverer, be a promoter. And finally, I'd like to conclude with a poem that illustrates Nash's trademark revelry in pronunciation. And this is called "Say It Isn't So." And he starts out by playing on two words, the word popular and classical. And when he combines them, it becomes popsicle. Some melodies are popular as well as classical, which I suppose makes them popsicles. And some poems are part William Cullen Bryant and part Nick Kenny, which makes them thanatopsicles. And to some people, Wisconsin is what Guinevere was to Lancelot. And if they are away from it, they are Wisconsilet. Some naturalists know why the Sphinx is Sphinx-like and the griffin is griffiny. And some couples are so wealthy that their tiffs are from Tiffany. Some Los Angeles fine each other a dollar if they say La Jala. And some give each other a Picasso and a Goya for pronouncing it La Jolla. Why should not I pick up a masterpiece or a coin? I will no longer say Des Moines. I shall sail into the railroad ticket office like a swan and ask for a ticket to Des Moines. And this I shall do because I am a conscientious man. When I throw rocks at seabirds, I will leave no turn unstoned. I am a meticulous man, and when I portray baboons, I leave no stern untoned. I am a man who values the fitness of things above notoriety and pelf, which is why I am happy I heard the Cockney postmaster say to a doctor who was returning a leprechaun to Glockamora in an open envelope, "Physician, seal thy elf."
You know, we are in kind of a golden age of poetry. It's coming back in style. The young people are getting on board for the ride. And they're writing rap and hip hop, spoken word and performance poetry, and inventing even new forms of poetry. It's all very exciting and very amazing. But people were doing this a while ago too. I think Ogden Nash was in a class of his own, and if you notice, there were a lot of made up words there, and that's one thing poetry does too. So if you like creating, you can really make up your own words as you go along writing poetry. Our next presenter is going to be Beverly Joyce, who's a charter member of New River Poets, and she's been reading and writing poetry since grade school. She prefers rhyming traditional poetry and poems that have a particular message. And after all, when we read poetry, we're not just reading words on a page. We're really connecting with someone's thoughts and feelings. So you do find these poets you like, and you recognize an identifiable take, kind of their little philosophy that runs through all their poetry. And it's so wonderful to go and pick up poems by that same author. And it's not surprising that Bev chose a poem by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow to read.
I like to have my poetry reflect faith, the beauty of nature, and pastoral themes. I believe in having it reflect faith and family. And I draw my inspiration from my life experiences, whether it's my time in the military, the times I've lived in California as well as Florida. I enjoy singing in the choir and writing stories and articles as well. And poetry for me is a deeper expression of feelings, memories, and love. It is a voice like no other. And since I like that, and Henry Wadsworth Longfellow really put this kind of style of writing. And he was one of America's most beloved poets. He was not only a poet, he was an educator as well. He was a native of Portland, Maine, born in 1807, and he passed away in 1882. And in his 75 years, he wrote about 1,000 poems, and he wrote about life, faith, courage, family. He knew about joy, and he knew about grief. He had survived 2 wives, but he had wonderful children that he loved. And one well-known poem, and my favorite, by the way, is entitled A Psalm of Life. And you can feel the conviction of faith in this poem. A Psalm of Life. Tell me not in mournful numbers, life is but an empty dream. For the soul is dead that slumbers, and things are not what they seem. Life is real, life is earnest, and the grave is not its goal. Dust thou art to dust returnest, was not spoken of the soul. Not enjoyment and not sorrow is our destined end or way, but to act that each tomorrow finds us further than today. Art is long and time is fleeting, and our hearts, though stout and brave, still like muffled drums are beating funeral marches to the grave. In the world's broad field of battle, in the bivouac of life, be not like dumb, driven cattle. Be a hero in the strife. Trust no future, however pleasant. Let the dead past bury its dead. Act in the living present, heart within and God o'erhead. Lives of great men all around us remind us we can make our lives sublime, and departing leave behind us footprints on the sands of time. Footprints that perhaps another, sailing o'er life's solemn main, a forlorn and shipwrecked brother, seeing, shall take heart again. Let us then be up and doing, with a heart for any fate, still achieving, still pursuing, learn to labor and to wait. Longfellow also expressed the interconnection between people in his poem, The Arrow and the Song. I shot an arrow into the air. It fell to earth, I knew not where. For so swiftly it flew, the sight could not follow it in its flight. I breathed a song into the air. It fell to earth, I knew not where. For who has sight so keen and strong that it can follow the flight of song? Long, long afterward, in an oak, I found the arrow still unbroke, and the song from beginning to end I found again in the heart of a friend. And finally, he also was good about capturing moods. And here's one that's is particularly expressive of that talent. It's called Curfew. Solemnly, mournfully, dealing its dole, the curfew bell is beginning to toll. Cover the embers and put out the light. Toll comes with the morning and rest with the night. Dark grow the windows and quenched is the fire. Sound fades into silence. All footsteps retire. No voice in the chambers, no sound in the hall. Sleep and oblivion reign over all. The book is completed and closed like the day, and the hand that has written it lays it away. Dim grow its fancies, forgotten they lie. Like coals in the ashes, they darken and die. Song sinks into silence. The story is told. The windows are darkened. The hearthstone is cold. Darker and darker, the black shadows fall. Sleep and oblivion reign over all. Thank you.
We know Longfellow's longer epic poems, The Song of Hiawatha and Paul Revere's Ride, and the way poetry sticks to you, his does. That second poem, too, I think was familiar to a lot of people. And I remember one day I had a man from the Wesley Chapel Chamber of Commerce writing a check for me. Actually, it was for my poetry contest. We used to have a state poetry contest for students, for middle and high school students, and I chaired it for about 12 years. And he was writing a check to use for prizes for that. And it was the 18th of April, and he started writing. It was the 18th of April in 75, hardly a man alive. I don't know it, but he started reciting the poem, The Ride of Paul Revere. So it just shows you how that poetry sticks with you. Ken Clanton is our next poet. He's down there on the end, and Ken is very hoarse today, so he's not going to recite he brought his own poem here to be read, and John's going to read it. But to tell you a little bit about Ken, he's a native Floridian whose background includes writing for political campaigns as well as advertising. And he's not a name dropper, but all of us know that for 7 years he handled publicity for Elvis Presley. And much of his own poetry is written in Florida cracker style. And for him to recite it is really great. Nobody delivers it quite as well as he does. And I want to mention also that he's written a book entitled Laugh Time, Wildly Funny Joke Poems. And I've bought this for people who are sick. Now, this is available on Amazon, too, just like John's book. And, you can order it there, and it's really a fun book to read. Let's see, what else do we have to say? I guess that's it. John, you're going to read his poem for? Right.
And this poem was written when Ken's daughter, Amy, was in grade school. And the poem was written overnight and sent to Amy's teacher. Amy's Homework is the title. Now, I understand your motive, but please take these words as quotive. That's an awful piece of work assigned my Amy. She was having some trouble and trying to add, subtract, and double because that 9-block trick you gave her was so gamey. So across the room she trips, asking Daddy for some tips, asking me how should she work that awful puzzle. Well, it was tackled unafraid, 'cause she's only in 6th grade, and nothing she could have would me befuzzle. So I switched off my TV, and with her head upon my knee, I set about to show her how 'twas done. Her tiny face bore admiration and so much anticipation as I lectured her on how her homework could be fun. Now, it only takes some logic, as I waxed so pedagogic, and I said, it seems the 12 goes in the middle. I said, it must be so, 'cause it's like just tic-tac-toe, and the center's the whole key to this here puzzle. Well, the few I tried at guess didn't fit, I must confess, and I worked and carried on so undeterred. Then came times filled with elation. That mathematical equation would seem to have been solved without a word. But as I tried to fill each square, my master plan would somehow tear to spawn unspoken thoughts of words profane. Then I'd try another group, just as certain as duck soup, just to find that I had failed her once again. Then the blocks would come together, tight as bristles on a feather. I was certain that I had the problem solved. I could count on 6 of 9, but the other 3 declined to match the others or to get involved. Well, the hours, they grew deep, and a child must have her sleep. So off to bed I sent the youngster packing. Never fear, my darling daughter, I'll not eat nor taste of water till I've found that silly key that we've been lacking. Success would come a soaring, but defeat would come a roaring to shatter each hand one hypothesis. Then another tack I'd take while I fought to stay awake, just to start again at Genesis. Well, the time just rolled along, and 'twas soon the crack of dawn, and still the answer would not crystallize. At those pages I would glower, and I sought to overpower what I thought to be a simple exercise. Oh, you ought to be ashamed to have tangled up my brain and causing my synapses to short-circuit. I'm no scientific blighter, I'm a dreamer and a writer, and I'll be hanged if I can tell her how to work it.
During National Poetry Month, sometimes we try to do special things like we'll write pocket poems and carry them with us and give them away, or put them up on bulletin boards somewhere. And one year, Ken wrote an original poem every single day and sent it out by email. And we all just waited for that poem all the time. It was so much fun. Betty Ann Whitney says she's been writing poetry forever. She was a member of that very first group, that New River Poets and Writers. So she's been meeting here in this library before it was all redone for more than 25 years. She served as president of New River Poets and also president of the Florida State Poets Association. And we find that so many of our members are not only talented as writers, but they also are talented in the other arts. And that's Betty Ann. She's a wonderful artist, and she has taught classes in acrylic and oil painting.
So thank you all for coming. And like she said, my name is Betty Ann Whitney. Can you hear me back there? Can you hear? Oh, good. Okay, it's said that writing down inner thoughts and feelings is a good way to express innermost sensitivities, reactions, moods, and so forth. And I believe this. For me, as I remember, it began probably as a kindergartner. I would tell stories out at the backyard swing set that gathered not only my younger siblings, but a few neighborhood kids. And I even set up a stage under the basement staircase to perform plays. and I assigned parts to the other kids. Older, I tried rhyming little ditties and such until, as a teenager, I kept a diary noting everyday life. Later, as a young stay-at-home housewife and mother, my husband encouraged my creativity in the arts. But after years of marriage and routine grew into boredom, I discovered poetry composed by other young mothers, like Sylvia Plath, Louise Gluck, and Anne Sexton, all Pulitzer Prize winners. Their poetry brought their daily experiences into their work, and often breaking away from traditional forms, using free verse in colloquial language. At the library, I found a world of books, not only of popular poets of the day, but educational books giving examples of the craft. So it was not overnight that I learned the craft. And I'm still studying other poets' work. But I saw an ad in the newspaper 25 years ago, and it was an invitation to New River and poets and writers, which eventually became the local New River Poets, whose membership includes state and national poetry societies. Here I learned of Jane Kenyon, who became a later favorite poet of mine. And in an interview with Bill Moyers, she said, "One of the functions of poetry is to keep the memory of people and places and things and happenings alive." So I have two of Jane Kenyon's poems here to read. And the first one is called Waiting. At the grocery store on a rainy July day, I pull beside a family wagon. Connecticut plates, but no luggage. Summer people then, up for bright days and cool nights and local church fairs. They may have been coming here for years. 3 little boys and a golden retriever are steaming up the windows, already smudged by the dog's nose. The smallest boy pitches himself repeatedly over the seat, arms and legs flying like some rubbery toy. From time to time, the dog woofs affectionately. Inside, I look for their mother. And what about their father? Is he here too, or does he come only on weekends and holidays from Stamford, Farmington, or Darien? There she is, of the right age, dressed expensively, stiffly, carrying a straw summer bag with a scrimshaw whale on the lid, a hard little basket out of which she draws a single bill for the food. Clearly, this time she comes alone. She will fill the cottage cupboards and refrigerator, settle the boys on the sleeping porch with 1 bunk bed and 1 cot, and arbitrate the annual fight over who gets to sleep on top. And she will wait. Life is odd. I too am waiting. Though if you asked me what for, I wouldn't know what to say. So that shows you how you can bring your everyday. If you keep a diary, you can look at that years later and be right at the place you were when you wrote it. And this is another poem by Jane Kenyon, and it's called The Pair. There is a moment in middle age when you grow bored, angered by your middling mind, afraid. That day the sun burns hot and bright, making you more desolate. It happens suddenly, as when a pear spoils from the inside out. And you may not be aware until things have gone too far.
Fred Wood says he remembers poetry as far back as grade school, but it wasn't until he was in high school that he realized poems don't have to rhyme. And this opened his mind to writing free verse poems more suited to his ideas. And he grew up in the hollers of West Virginia, served in the U.S. Navy for 3 years, and worked as a welder. Now in retirement, his pastimes include writing wonderful emotional poetry. Much of the poems being written today are the lyrics of songs. Our songwriters are our poets today. And he's going to read from two lyricists that had a great impression on him.
Hi, I'm Fred. I'm a poet. Been a poet most of my life. I am trying to do better. The origins of, well, let's just get right on to it. The poems that I most enjoyed were from the mid-20th century. They reached the deepest end of me, and I responded to them, and they've stuck with me all this time. The one poet was Paul Simon. And when you recognize the poem, raise your hand. We'll just see. Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again about a vision softly creeping, left its seeds while I was sleeping, and the vision that was planted in my brain still remains within the sound of silence. In restless dreams I walked alone, narrow streets of cobblestone, neath the halo of a street lamp. I turned my collar to the cold and the damp, when my eyes were stabbed by the flash of a neon light. It split the night, and it touched the sound of silence. In the naked light, I saw 10,000 people, maybe more. People talking without speaking, people hearing without listening, people writing songs that voices never shared. No one dared disturb the sound of silence. Fool, said I, you do not know silence like a cancer grow. Hear my words that I might teach you. Take my arms that I might reach you. But my words, like silent raindrops, fell, echoed in the wells of silence. And the people bowed and prayed to this neon god they had made. And the sign flashed out its warning in the words that it was forming. And the sign said, the words of the prophets are written on the subway walls, tenement halls, whispered in the sound of silence. And the cell phone rings, a song without words, to let you know someone wishes to talk to you in text rather than spoken words, claiming all your attention with carefully limited symbols while you ignore the people sitting next to you. The sound of silence is right here, right now, and the words of the prophets are written on a tiny screen in your hand. See, this song is still valid. And one more little song. This is from another person. Paul Simon and his group were mostly influenced by each other in Greenwich Village in New York. And this one was a similar group over in Britain, in Liverpool, in the less popular places. This one is by Paul McCartney. Oh, look at all the lonely people, all the lonely, lonely people. Eleanor Rigby picks up the rice in the church where a wedding has been, lives in a dream, waits at the window wearing a face she keeps in a jar by the door. Who is it for? All the lonely people, where do they all come from? All the lonely, lonely people, where do they all belong? Father Mackenzie, writing the words of a sermon no one will hear, no one comes near. Look at him working, darning his socks in the night when there's no one there. What does he care? All the lonely people, where do they all come from? All the lonely, lonely people, where do they all belong? Eleanor Rigby died in the church and was buried along with her name. Nobody came. Father Mackenzie, wiping the dirt from his hands as he walks from the grave. Nobody was saved. All the lonely people, where do they all come from? All the lonely, lonely people, where do they belong? Oh, look at all the lonely people.
I remember hearing those songs the first time and how I knew it was poetry. Just beautiful, beautiful lyrics. Next, we have Peggy Burgess down at the end there. She tells us she's been performing forever. Since at the age of 3, she stood up on a piano bench at church and sang. And she continued to sing for a long time. And she's performed with several opera companies. And she began the activities program at Sun City and served as the director of activities director. And she's still doing that. She conducted a tour of opera houses in Europe. Oh, the operas themselves. Okay. And she still assists in their program over there, along with a whole lot of other things that she does. And she might tell you a little bit about that. But she joined New River Poets a little bit more recently, but she's been writing poetry and song lyrics for some time. So I'm going to pass this down to her.
And I'm Peggy. And I don't call myself a poet. I write verse, but I move in an atmosphere of poetry with all my friends, and I've learned a lot. But I really didn't think about poetry for a long time because I would thought about music. As I said, I started singing publicly at 3, worked my way later to sing for college scholarship, and was fortunate enough to sing quite a bit. But there comes a time in life when things change, and because of age and difficult respiratory problems, I couldn't sing any longer. And I felt like, oh my, I've lost an arm or a leg. I've lost me because I've been singing all my life. It was a natural thing to do. But I found it, and I wrote a little poem this morning that says, now why would I call poetry my meat? Let me put it this way, short and sweet. Once I could pour out my heart in songs, and though that gift to me no longer belongs, I am not left without remedy. I can still sing in poetry. And through the influence of some good friends, I thought, well, I've been reciting poetry for years and years because so many of the songs that I sang were poetry set to music. I mean, in an opera, the words have to be first put into poetic form because music needs a rhythm, a meter, and poetry. And so I've really been involved in poetry for many, many years without realizing it. And now I totally enjoy it. I write poetry and I have time. I also continue working in activities, doing various things that I enjoy doing. And this is why I'm still working. But anyway, I do belong to the Florida Poetry Association. I belong to John's group in Sun City Center. And, of course, to the New River Poets. And I've learned so much from these people. And I find that I can still sing. It's just in a different form. And this is why I love poetry so much, and why in these later years of my life, I enjoy doing it. I still enjoy singing. And I will just share one little verse that I write a lot of poetry about music because it's something I know and love. And one of the little poems that I've written about music just sort of says, okay, many people can do many things, and that's okay. But this is the way I feel about it. It says, sing, nightingale, trill your golden note. Let it soar in sweet abandon, welling from your tiny throat on silver pinions of its own. Let it float. ignore the lion roaring in the night. His powerful and lordly voice can fill a mortal soul with fright, but cannot make an angel choir pause in flight. And this is the way I feel about poetry, and this is why I enjoy writing it. I don't have a favorite poet. I don't have a favorite opera. I don't have a favorite song. I don't have a favorite composer. It happens to be the one I'm involved in at the moment. I read a variety of poetry. I have sung a variety of songs, everything from dance band to jazz to opera. I love what I'm doing at the moment, and this is the way I feel about poetry. I love the variety, and I love what it gives me, and perhaps what I'm able to give back through poetry. And I use it quite a bit in my work, and I find that it helps. In fact, it's demanded. There are a lot of things I have to do. I teach an opera class called What's So Grand About Opera, and the way I start it is this. Opera is not a four-letter word. Its letters are actually 5, and this is the way it should be heard: up close, personal, alive. And I teach other classes and other things, and I find that poetry gets attention, and people will listen to it because it has meter, and it has rhyme, and it's a song. So I love the music in poetry.
And that comes to me. I've always loved to write all different kinds of things and little rhymes when I was younger, but I continued writing for into adulthood, and I actually wrote for a lot of the community newspapers around here. Right around the same time when I joined New River Poets, and we had some wonderful mentors, and through them I discovered contemporary poets. You know, I knew the classic poets and so forth, but I learned about Billy Collins, Ted Kooser, Mary Oliver, who were writing a lot right about that time 25 years ago. And we've seen some of them in person. Ted Kooser was even, we were bringing him to Wesley Chapel for a poetry event we had at the Performing Center at Wesley Chapel High back in, I think it was 2006. And at the last minute, he couldn't come. But he became kind of a special friend of ours, and we kept in contact with him. He was Poet Laureate of the United States at that time. But anyway, I liked Billy Collins for his quirky tongue-in-cheek, his poems that made me laugh. I liked Ted Kooser because he was a master of metaphor. He looked at ordinary things in a different way. And I loved Mary Oliver because her nature poems opened my eyes even more to the world around me, and her simplicity and her calm and conversational way of writing. And I thought maybe what I would do is share 3 short poems by each one of those people. First, Billy Collins is kind of, like I say, he's tongue-in-cheek, and he writes quirky. In this one, if you've ever been to a museum or to Mosey, you might be able to relate to this poem. Earthling. You have probably come across those scales in planetariums that tell you how much you should weigh on other planets. You have noticed the fat ones lingering on the Mars scale and the emaciated slowing up the line for Neptune. As a creature of average weight, I fail to see the attraction. Imagine squatting in the wasteland of Pluto, all 5 tons of you, or wandering around Mercury, wondering what to do next with your ounce. How much better to step onto the simple bathroom scale, a happy earthling feeling the familiar ropes of gravity. 157 pounds standing soaking wet, a respectful distance from the sun. I just chuckle when I read his poetry. And I have one from Ted Kooser. Like, you know, we all were saying this, but Peggy put it into words. How do you choose a favorite poem, a favorite poet? There's so many. There's so many wonderful poems. And this one by Ted Kooser is called The Old People. And when I first read it, I went, "Aw," but now I'm one of the old people. So here we go. Handcuffs rolled, and in old shoes, they stumble over the rocks and wade out into a cold river of shadows, far from the fire, so far that its warmth no longer reaches them, and its light, but for the sparks in their eyes when they chance to look back, scarcely brushes their faces. Their ears are full of night, rustle of black leaves against a starless sky. Sometimes they hear us calling, and sometimes they don't. They are not searching for anything much, nor are they much in need of finding something new. They are feeling their way out into the night, letting their eyes adjust to the future. And Mary Oliver, how many people are familiar with Mary Oliver poetry? Some people. I would like to read her most famous one because it's so perfect. And you'll find it framed. You can go on Amazon and find pictures of it in frames, and it's just a wonderful poem. And actually, I'm told that it inspired the swimmer Diana Nyad when she swam from Cuba to Key West. She was older and she wasn't too sure she could do it, but she was familiar with Mary Oliver's poems, and this one, I guess, inspired her. The Summer Day by Mary Oliver. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean. The one who has flung herself out of the grass. The one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Love that one. So I think what all three of those poets have in common is they write about everyday things. And just like I said, I wrote a poem about pollen and sneezing and all that kind of thing, because there's a poem in everything. We were talking about how your impressions are very quick, and you want to remember certain things. Write them down in a poem. Even though those of you who are just appreciators of poetry, not necessarily writing, you're writing poems all the time in your head. You don't know it. So, before we read our own poetry, I wanted to make an announcement. I don't think we have a little bit more time here, but there's going to be a special event. Poetry is always read at special events, more memorials and so on. And it's going to be at Lettuce Lake Park this coming Tuesday. You can go on, I think it's called Poetry in Parks. And it's an initiative by the U.S. Poet Laureate right now, Adel Limon. And they're installing historic American poems in national parks. Everglades National Park is going to be one of them that has it. 7 parks, I think they've chosen. And there's a poem by Mary Oliver that's going to be at the Cape Cod National Seashore. So, some of our favorite poetry is going to be featured in that. So they're doing something there. And Gianna Russo is going to be the featured poet. She's a friend of New River Poets, I would say. We've done a lot of things with her, and she's a creative writing teacher at St. Leo University. So she's going to be the featured poet on that day in Lettuce Lake. Mayor Jane Castor has named her a wordsmith for the city of Tampa. So you've heard the poems that we love. We encourage you to read. Find the poems that touch your soul. Find what you like and memorize some of the lines that you love. I had one in my head. We head home through the gloss of rain, the weight of snow, or The Plum Blush of Dusk, but Always Home. That's a poem by Richard Blanco. I think it's the last stanza. He read it at, I think, Barack Obama's inauguration, but it's a beautiful poem, the entire poem, but I loved those lines. But find something that you love. Our own poets have won many awards, and many of them have been published widely, so I expect you're going to enjoy what you hear of their own poetry. We'll briefly go through some of those, and I just wish we had a bigger audience. We'd love to share poems, both the poets we read and our own poetry. So the next time we come here, Susan Boyle, we hope to have even more people come. I know sometimes poetry is a hard sell, but they're missing something wonderful. So we hope that more and more people are getting used to poetry and want to hear more.
I'd like to offer my own tribute to Ogden Nash. This is called Idaho Down. Hands a clappin', boots a thumpin', skirts a flappin', rumps a bumpin'. Feel the vibes and hear the noisy Idaho cowgirls and Boise.
Love at life's table. If everyone from all of history's pages, all from north, south, west, and east, gathered for a covered dish potluck, it would be one great universal feast. If love and peace were on the menu, with sides of friendship and goodwill, if we could stop creating problems and rather make a nice hot meal, we would season every plate with laughter, hope, and joy. We would pour cups of blessing for every man, woman, girl, and boy. If we could wash away our troubles while we wash each pot and pan, it would be the finest banquet ever served to all of man.
That if, the way you're saying if, reminds me, I even brought a copy of it. I mentioned that we had a poem, my sister and I, when we were growing up, on our wall, and I actually found a copy of this vintage poem. It was called If for Girls. It was kind of after Rudyard Kipling's, he wrote one about If for Boys. But I grew up with this poem on my wall. I've read it so many times. Okay, let's see. Betty Ann, Betty Ann would be next.
Time is an open door. At one time, at the kitchen window of our busy home, there were violets dappled in sunshine. We were children then, half-grown, mischievous, and private as the huddle of a football game. I've come back, though some said I wouldn't recognize it. For me, it's time stepping backwards across the bridge leading to that once hollow in the rocks. The cave we stooped to find a narrow passage, turning, twisting, and then suddenly drop. Here we look down on the tops of trees, sunshine glittering off the leaves and shadows, often spiraling down through the tight, gravelly twist of dirt, perfect for sliding downhill. Turning left on a heavy stem, we always found our way back home for somewhere below. Today, I do not see the house we made home. Bushes lining the walkway are now trees, dense, crowding the road. Spring and summer long, our garden, the fields and pastures, all have gone to a world of houses. So many houses, so close together. One might hear a neighbor singing, where I, as a young girl, heard whippoorwills calling. How different now the earth beneath my feet, once pillowed fallen leaves. The felled oak has disappeared, as too the whistled flute-like sounds of thrush mentioned in my grade school journal. It's not so much where did all the time go? It's the remains of time that continues inside someone like me.
Fred Wood, did you have something you wanted to read?
It's called Such Men. It's a bit trite, by the way. I met a man who thought he was the king of the world, and so he was. Another man who thought he himself was dirty and contemptible, and so he was. And a third man who claimed the world was a place of pain and suffering, and so it was. Another man who found delight in the rising of the sun and the blow of the wind, turning of the leaf, and so there was. What strange men, thinking they knew things, thinking what they thought mattered, because it did. Strange men who looked at the stars and called them by names, and know that they themselves had names too, and they were important too, because they did. Foolish men who thought they were part of the great eternal universe, as valid and as important as any star, and what they did mattered, because it did. Wonderful men who loved and cherished and mourned and cried and walked in the rain and the shine and carried their load and whistled as they walked, sang in their heart, stepped lightly on the earth, and touched a few souls along the way, because they did. Terrible men who made things and broke things and threw things and stole things. Men who felt the evil among their thoughts, their greed and sloth and sloppiness and frustration. Men who counted their coin and counted their friends and their faults and found themselves lacking. Such men, such as these, and so many more, so different from each other, so alike in stride, found in different places and different times. Many men strong in heart, weak in heart, foolishly courageous, cowardly and bold, smart and stupid, graceful, clumsy, arrogant, tired, cunning. I see them all around me. Oh, wait. Oh, yes. Now I see. Now I understand. Now I know. That was a mirror I was looking into.
That is typical of Fred's poetry. We usually wind up laughing or crying or something, it's just wonderful. I'm going to read a couple of mine, and then we're going to finish with Peggy, okay? You know why. Okay. I write narrative poetry mostly, rather than lyrical or introspective poetry. Usually free verse, but sometimes rhyming forms, like pantoums or villanelles. I do pay a lot of attention to rhythm, and I will just stop on a line until I get that rhythm right. You'll find even in free verse, sometimes when you read something like that, they'll tell you it's almost like this rhythm or this meter, but it's not quite, because it's free verse. But it's still so important. One of my favorite forms is blank verse, which requires no rhyming, but it is iambic pentameter. So it's da-dum, 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 da-dum. Did I do that 5 times? Yes. Okay. Much of Shakespeare is written in iambic pentameter. And the poem I'm going to read right now, the 2 poems I'm going to read are both from my book, Eyes Open Listening, and it's on Amazon too if you're interested. And the first one is His Barn, and this is blank verse. Collections that might someday be of use are stored in tumbled handiness on shelves where Carolina wrens build nests among the ropes and rusting cans of nuts and bolts. His ancient sanctum fills with hallowed junk, accumulating gizmos, gears, and tools. The rafters display ladders, chains, and frames. Not one to toss away a length of cord or piece of plywood sheathing, he'll make room beside the frozen treadmill or the files which he once found in a deserted store. His workbench is confusion, cluttered much with half-done projects waiting for his skill, brought there by friends and kin who know so well that this guy has behind a box or tub the perfect part to fix a broken bike, the goop to mend a leaking pipe, perhaps a salve to soothe a tender hoof. Who else could do what he does, using bits of this and hunks of that, stuff hoarded in his barn, returning all to wholeness once again? And that's a tribute to my husband's barn. And the next poem I'd like to read is kind of important because if you join our group, we meet at one of our members' homes, and she lives in a schoolhouse, a renovated schoolhouse that she and her husband renovated. It's where we hold our monthly meetings. It's a very inspirational venue. We just love to be there. It's filled with art, and we can think about all the children who went to school there once. And this poem is called The Old Richland Schoolhouse. Shoes scuff bare floorboards and are followed by the sounds of slamming desktops, clearing throats, and sniffling noses. A choral murmuring of lessons begins. You hear whispering behind open books, the scratch of pens, and muffled giggles. Words squeak as they are written across the blackboard, and stiff scissors chew curls of construction paper. Smell the spilled ink, the peanut butter sandwiches, and the damp jackets as they dry on backs of chairs pulled close to the potbelly stove. Rainy daylight stretches into the room through tall windows. As fragile as clouds of chalk dust, spirits have become students again and are hoping that the sun will come out for recess. And we want to thank you again for all your attention. And Peggy has a special poem that she's going to share with us.
One of the things that I do at Freedom Plaza, the retirement center where I work, is write stage plays so that our residents are the stars. And I have sometimes as many as 35 people who want to be in frolics. We call it Freedom Frolics, and it's a fundraiser for our scholarship fund. By the way, we're giving 31 scholarships this year of $3,000 to our employees. It's a good place to work. I've been there 35 years. But anyway, the stage plays that I write are all comedies. And one of the comedies that I wrote was called A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Atrium. It was set in ancient Rome, where Caesar, the salad king, was in charge. Now, he had a son named Little Caesar. And he decided that knowing how fractious politics could be, he wanted his son to have another profession as well. And so he sent him over to the Colosseum to sell pizza. And sometimes he would come in saying, "Pizza, pizza," with an old commercial. Well, one day, Little Pizza came in with a lot of his friends, and his dad said, "Hey, Little Caesar, what you been doing today?" And he said, "Well, I was," and he did this in rap, so you have to help me with the rhythm. 1, 2, 1, 2. I was over at the Colosseum today, selling my pizza, earning my pay, when all of a sudden I heard someone say, "Hey, Little Caesar, get out of the way. Move it, Little Caesar, get out of the way." I jumped aside, looked around the track, and here came a chariot going like the wind with 4 black horses, just blacker than sin, 4 beautiful horses, blacker than sin. And right on the side, where everyone could see, big bold letters, big as can be, it said, "Hungry Howie's Pizza, we deliver." Yeah, Hungry Howie's Pizza, they deliver. So, if I'm going to keep my business on top, I gotta have the keys to the chariot, Pop. You know I'm going to drive it sooner or later. The keys, please. Almighty Pater. The keys, please. I'm down on my knees. The keys, please. I got the keys. I got the keys. I got the keys. I got the keys.
A couple of weeks ago, we had our spring meeting of the state organization, and she wowed the crowd with that, so I wanted her to do that for you today, too. I want to thank you so much for having us here, and we love to share our poetry. We'd love to come back and spread the word. I know it's always hard to get a big group together on a Saturday. There are so many different things to do for people today, and that's probably one of the reasons that it's so hard for poetry or literary things, because there are a lot of choices in our life today. But I think what we think about all the time is that poetry really is a necessity. And when Peggy was talking about not being able to sing being like losing an arm or a leg, being without poetry would be like being without food. It's that necessary, you know. It's a thing. It's very important, and our world needs it like never before. So maybe sometime we could come back here, do another reading, do some workshops, judge a poetry contest. We're always looking for more young people to be involved with our group, and we want to be involved with you. So, think of us and get in touch with us. I put some flyers over here. They're still there on the table there with a telephone number that you can call if you want more information, or any other way we can be part of your lives and make poetry part of your lives. Thank you. Thank you, New River Library.